Most people were raised with one simple kitchen rule: never waste food. Cook once, eat twice. It saves time, saves money, and makes sense. But something important happens between the first meal and the second. When cooked food cools, sits overnight, and is heated again, it is no longer going through the same process. The pan may be the same and the food may look unchanged, yet the chemistry can be very different. With certain foods, especially when they are stored slowly or reheated at very high temperatures, that second round of heat can encourage harmful compounds or leave behind toxins that heat cannot remove. This does not mean leftovers are dangerous, and it certainly does not mean you should throw away every meal you cooked yesterday. In most cases, the difference between a safe leftover and a risky one comes down to how quickly it was cooled, how long it was stored, and how gently it was reheated. Before we look at 4 common foods, it helps to understand what the second heating actually does. The first time you cook food, heat performs useful work. It softens tough structures, unfolds proteins, so digestion becomes easier, releases nutrients, and kills many living bacteria. Then the food begins to cool. During storage, starches tighten into new structures, fats become more open to oxidation, and some bacterial spores that survived cooking may become active. By the time the food returns to the stove, heat is landing on material that has already been changed once. That second heating can create 3 separate problems. First, it can form compounds that were not present during the original meal. Second, it can build on damage that began during the first cooking, especially when oil, starch, or browned protein is exposed to intense heat again. Third, it may kill bacteria without destroying toxins, those bacteria produced while the food was sitting at an unsafe temperature. A dish can smell normal, look fresh, and feel piping hot while a heat-stable toxin remains inside it. The point is not fear. One reheated dinner does not decide your future health. Risk usually grows through small, repeated habits across many years. That is why the practical details matter more than dramatic warnings. You control the method: the temperature, cooling speed, storage time, number of reheats, and amount of moisture in the pan. The first food is spinach, along with other dark leafy greens such as kale, chard, arugula, and beet greens. Freshly cooked spinach is highly nutritious. It provides folate, vitamin K, iron, and lutein, and plant-rich diets are strongly tied to better heart and blood vessel health. The concern begins when cooked greens remain warm for too long. Leafy vegetables naturally contain nitrate from the soil. Nitrate itself is not the enemy. The body can even use it to produce nitric oxide, which helps blood vessels relax. But bacteria can convert nitrate into nitrite during warm storage. That change happens fastest in the temperature range, where food is neither properly hot nor properly cold. A pan of spinach left on the counter for hours is not simply waiting. Bacteria are active during that time. When the greens are later heated with protein, nitrite can react with natural amines and form N-nitroso compounds, including nitrosamines. Some members of this chemical family have been linked with cancer risk, especially in the digestive system. Again, the issue is not one leftover spinach omelet. The issue is repeated exposure created by the same storage and reheating pattern. Timing matters. This safer habit begins before the leftovers ever reach the refrigerator. Cook only the amount of greens you expect to eat, or move leftovers into the refrigerator within about an hour. If spinach remains, use it cold the next day in a salad, wrap, or chilled dish rather than sending it through another hot pan. The nutrition is still there, and the second high heat reaction never gets started. In other words, spinach itself is not the problem. Long, warm storage, followed by another intense heating, is the habit worth changing. The second food is rice, and this one deserves special attention because the danger is not based only on long-term chemical exposure. Poorly stored rice can cause sudden food poisoning. Uncooked rice may carry spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. A spore is a survival form protected by a hard outer shell. Boiling destroys many microorganisms, but these spores can survive normal cooking. Once the rice leaves the stove and slowly cools on the counter, the spores can wake up, multiply, and produce toxins. One of those toxins, cerulide, is heat stable. This is the detail many people miss. Reheating rice until it is steaming may kill active bacteria, but it does not reliably remove a toxin that was already produced while the rice sat warm. That is why takeout rice left out overnight and fried the next day has become a classic food poisoning example, sometimes called fried rice syndrome. The reheat creates a false sense of safety. The rice is hot, so it feels sterilized. But heat cannot reverse everything that happened during storage. For a younger, healthy adult, the result may be several miserable hours of vomiting or diarrhea. For an older person, especially someone taking acid-reducing medicine, a blood pressure medicine, or a water pill, the same illness can become more serious. Dehydration develops faster, recovery may take longer, and a hospital visit can become necessary. Rice also changes physically when it cools. Its starch forms a tighter structure through a process called retrogradation. That change is not automatically harmful. In fact, cooled starch may affect blood sugar differently. The concern appears when cold rice is placed in a very hot, dry pan and aggressively browned. High-temperature browning of starchy foods can form acrylamide, a compound that health agencies have studied because of its possible cancer risk. The amount depends on temperature, time, and degree of browning, which means the method still matters. The safest approach is simple. Move cooked rice into a shallow container soon after cooking so heat can escape quickly. A deep pot may feel cool at the surface, while the center remains warm for a long time. Refrigerate the rice within about an hour, eat it within 24 hours when possible, and reheat only once. Make sure it becomes steaming hot all the way through, not merely warm on top. Stirring during reheating helps remove cold pockets. This is an important distinction. Rice should not be feared, and leftovers do not need to be banned. The real danger comes from giving spores enough warm time to grow and then assuming a later blast of heat can erase the past. It cannot. Storage controls the toxin risk, while gentle reheating controls unnecessary browning. The third issue is not a single food. It is the oil inside the food, the oil left in the pan, and the bottle used for cooking. Oils high in polyunsaturated fats, including many sunflower, corn, soybean, and generic vegetable oils, contain several double bonds in their fatty acids. Those bonds break easily. The next problem begins with the cooking oil already inside the meal. Another breakdown product found in badly overheated oil is acrolein, the sharp compound that makes burnt oil sting the throat and eyes. The key fact is that damage increases with repeated heating. Fresh oil begins to break apart during the first high-temperature cooking. When the same oil is heated again, the second round starts with material that is already partly damaged. Oxidation can move faster, and more breakdown products may appear. Many people assume this only matters when restaurants reuse deep frying oil or when someone stores used oil in a jar. That is only part of the story. Oil remains inside cooked food. When last night's stir-fry, fried chicken, or roasted meat is placed in a smoking hot skillet, the oil coating and absorbed into that food is heated again. You can reheat oil without ever pouring it from a storage jar. 3 changes reduce the problem. First, do not save frying oil for repeated use. It may look clear after filtering, but appearance cannot show the degree of chemical breakdown. Second, when reheating a cooked meal on the stove, use low or medium heat instead of a scorching pan. These reactions are strongly driven by temperature. Lowering the heat slows them sharply. Third, for many stovetop meals, extra virgin olive oil is a practical choice. It is rich in monounsaturated fat, has fewer fragile double bonds than many seed oils, and also contains natural antioxidants. That does not make it indestructible, but it generally handles ordinary cooking and gentle reheating well. Now we reach the fourth food, and it may be the most relevant because cooked animal protein is reheated so often. Chicken leads the list, but the same basic concerns apply to beef, pork, fish, and even eggs. A family may roast chicken on Sunday and eat it again on Monday and Tuesday. There is nothing wrong with that plan when the food is cooled, stored, and warmed correctly. The problem is the popular method of dropping cold, already browned meat into a very hot, dry skillet to make the outside crisp again. High-temperature cooking of meat can form heterocyclic amines, often shortened to HCAs. These compounds develop when amino acids and creatine in muscle react during intense cooking. They collect mainly in browned, charred, and heavily seared areas. Laboratory research shows that some HCAs can damage DNA, and studies have examined links between frequent intake of heavily browned meat and cancers, including those of the colon, pancreas, and prostate. The evidence does not mean a brown chicken thigh causes cancer. It means repeated high exposure is a factor worth reducing when the fix is easy. Think about what happens during reheating. The surface has already gone through the browning reaction once. A second trip into a blazing pan browns the same area again. Instead of simply warming the chicken, you are repeating the reaction on a surface that already contains products from the first cooking. Dry, intense heat can also increase advanced glycation end products, commonly called AGEs. These compounds form when sugars react with proteins or fats. Research comparing cooking methods has found that method often matters more than the food itself. Fried, grilled, or broiled meat can contain far more AGEs than the same meat cooked with moist methods, such as poaching, steaming, or stewing. AGEs are studied because they may contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation, particularly in blood vessel disease, kidney problems, and complications of diabetes. Chicken also carries a separate food safety issue. Storage still matters. That storage lesson leads directly to the safest way to warm chicken. The best way to reheat chicken is also the easiest way to keep it moist. Place it in a pan over medium-low heat. Add a small splash of water or broth and cover it with a lid. The trapped steam warms the meat gently and evenly. Because the surface stays below aggressive browning temperatures, fewer heat-driven compounds form. The oils inside the meat are less likely to break down, and the chicken does not turn dry and stringy. The habit to leave behind is reheating cold chicken in a smoking hot, dry skillet. It may create a crisp edge, but it also repeats the harshest part of the original cooking process. If texture matters, warm the chicken gently first, and use only a brief finish at moderate heat rather than scorching the entire portion. Storage matters just as much. Cooked poultry should go into the refrigerator within 2 hours, or within 1 hour, when the room or outdoor temperature is very hot. Keep the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, and use the chicken within 3 to 4 days, according to standard food safety guidance. Many people choose a shorter window because home refrigerators are opened often and are not always as cold as the display suggests. A small appliance thermometer can tell you what the shelf temperature really is. At this point, some viewers may be wondering whether years of eating reheated meals have already caused harm. That fear deserves a direct answer. No one can draw a straight line from a person's batch cooking habit to a specific cancer diagnosis. Cancer develops through a complicated mix of age, genetics, infection, smoking, alcohol, body weight, environmental exposure, and many other factors. Anyone who claims a single leftover meal explains one person's illness is making a promise the evidence cannot support. A better way to think about prevention is as the gradual removal of avoidable risks. The body repairs damage constantly, but no system is perfect. Across decades, health is shaped by many small exposures and many small protections. One dramatic event is rarely the whole story. Reducing unnecessary high heat, cooling food quickly, and avoiding repeated reheating will not guarantee that disease never occurs. It simply removes several preventable stresses without demanding expensive products or wasting good food. Imagine a woman in her late 60s who cooks once every Sunday because cooking for one person each evening feels costly and lonely. After a relative receives a colon cancer diagnosis, she reads alarming articles and begins to blame herself for decades of family meals. The correct response is not to tell her to stop batch cooking. It is to help her change the parts of the routine that actually matter. Instead of placing a deep pot of hot food directly into the refrigerator, she divides meals into shallow containers so they cool faster. Greens are stored promptly and eaten cold the next day. Chicken is warmed under a lid with a splash of broth instead of being fried again. Rice is refrigerated quickly, used within a day, and heated only once. Her Sunday routine remains. The meals still save money and reduce daily work. Only the risky steps change. This brings us to the kitchen appliance that many health videos have blamed for years: the microwave. When it comes to reheating most of these foods, the microwave is often a safer option than a dry skillet. That may sound backward because microwaves are surrounded by myths, but the basic physics is simple. That basic reheating process matters. Used correctly, that ordinary appliance changes the entire reheating routine. Microwaving does not automatically destroy nutrients either. Every cooking method affects some vitamins, but time and water matter. Boiling can pull water-soluble nutrients into the cooking liquid, which is often poured away. A short microwave cycle with little added water may preserve more of those nutrients than long boiling. The microwave does have one real weakness: uneven heating. A plate can be steaming at the edges and cold in the center. Those cold areas may allow bacteria to survive. The solution is not complicated. Cover the food to hold in steam, stir or rotate it halfway through, and allow it to stand for 1 or 2 minutes after the timer ends. Heat continues to spread during that resting period. For thick food, check more than one area before eating. When reheating meat or poultry, the center should reach a safe temperature, not simply feel warm at the surface. For chicken, rice, and many mixed dishes, a properly used microwave usually creates less browning than a skillet and warms the meal with less added oil. Leafy greens are the main exception in this discussion, not because microwave energy is uniquely dangerous, but because the better choice is often to avoid reheating them and eat the leftovers cold. There is also a clear line between long-term risk reduction and an immediate medical emergency. Everything discussed so far concerns habits that may influence exposure over time. Food poisoning can become urgent within hours or days. Seek medical help when vomiting will not stop, diarrhea lasts more than 2 days, fever rises above 102 degrees Fahrenheit, blood appears in the stool, or signs of dehydration develop. Those signs include dizziness when standing, very little or no urine for around 8 hours, a dry mouth, unusual weakness, or confusion. Older adults can become dehydrated faster, especially when taking medicines that affect blood pressure or fluid balance. Confusion, fainting, severe weakness, or an inability to keep liquids down should not be treated as a wait-and-see problem. Contact a clinician promptly or go for urgent care. And when food smells sour, feels slimy, shows mold, or has been in the refrigerator for an unknown number of days, reheating is not a rescue method. Throwing it away is the sensible choice. The most useful lessons from this entire discussion can be put into a routine that starts tonight. First, do not leave cooked food sitting at room temperature for hours. Divide large amounts into shallow containers so they cool quickly, and refrigerate them promptly. A large pot holds heat in the center much longer than most people realize. Second, treat cooked leafy greens differently from other leftovers. Prepare what you are likely to eat, chill the rest quickly, and use them cold when practical. Third, cool rice rapidly. Store it in a shallow container. Use it within about 24 hours when possible, and reheat it only once until steaming throughout. Fourth, replace the smoking hot, dry skillet with moist, moderate heat. Add a splash of water, broth, or sauce. Cover the pan and let steam do the work. Fifth, stop reusing old frying oil. Repeated heating speeds its breakdown even when the oil still looks normal. Choose a suitable fresh oil and keep the temperature under control. Sixth, use the microwave as a tool rather than treating it as a threat. Cover the dish, stir halfway through, and let it stand before serving. These steps cost almost nothing. Keep leftovers enjoyable, and reduce waste without pretending every meal is a medical emergency. Those same 4 factors also guide the final decisions before serving. A leftover meal should not make you anxious. It should make you attentive. Ask 4 quick questions before you eat it. How soon was it refrigerated? How long has it been stored? Has it already been reheated? And will the method you choose warm it gently and evenly, or burn the surface while leaving the center cold? Those questions are far more useful than trusting appearance alone. Heat is powerful, but it is not a reset button. This is where common kitchen habits can quietly work against us. People often leave dinner on the stove until every person has finished eating. The dishes are washed and the kitchen is cleaned. By then, 2 or 3 hours may have passed. Others put a large covered pot directly into the refrigerator, where the outside cools, but the center stays warm. Some heat the whole container every night, serve one portion, then return the remainder to the refrigerator. Each cycle gives bacteria another warm period and exposes fats, starches, and proteins to more heat. A safer system is to portion leftovers soon after the meal. Use small, shallow containers. Refrigerate what will be eaten within the next day or two, and freeze the rest while it is still fresh. Reheat only the portion you plan to eat. This reduces repeated temperature changes and makes meals easier to manage. Freezing does not kill every microorganism, but it slows growth and gives you more time. Thaw food in the refrigerator, in cold water changed regularly, or in the microwave when it will be cooked immediately. Do not leave frozen meat or rice on the counter for the entire afternoon. The outside can enter the bacterial growth range, while the middle remains frozen. It also helps to separate quality from safety. Dry chicken may be unpleasant, but not necessarily unsafe. Food can also taste normal and still contain a toxin. Smell and texture are useful warning signs, but they cannot prove a meal is safe. Time and temperature records tell you more. When in doubt about how long a high-risk food has been sitting out, caution is wiser than a heroic attempt to save one serving. None of this requires perfection. Families are busy, refrigerators are crowded, and people forget when a container was made. A strip of tape with the cooking date can remove the guesswork. A refrigerator thermometer can show whether food is being kept cold enough. A few shallow containers can cool meals faster than one deep pot. These are ordinary actions, but ordinary actions are what shape health over years. The 4 foods in this video each teach a different lesson. Leafy greens show how warm storage can change naturally occurring nitrate chemistry. Rice shows why toxins formed during storage may survive reheating. Oil shows how repeated high temperatures speed chemical breakdown. Chicken shows how browning, oxidation, and contamination can overlap in one common leftover. Their solutions all point in the same direction. Cool food quickly, keep it cold, limit reheating, add moisture, and avoid extreme heat. So keep batch cooking, keep saving money, keep using leftovers. Give food less heat, less time in the danger zone, and fewer trips between the refrigerator and the stove. If this video helped you see leftovers differently, subscribe to the channel, share it with the person who handles most of the cooking in your home, and leave a comment telling us which of these 4 foods surprised you most. Small kitchen changes are easy to dismiss, but repeated every week, they can protect your meals, your budget, and the people sitting at your table.